Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. This is it's just a daily video, but it's a very special one. I would like everyone to think about it deeply. I would like everyone to share it and talk about the idea with yourself, thinking, and then with others, expressing your ideas and seeing what other people think about this. So let's get into it. In the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, we get to the very end of the movie and there's the old wise knight, old warrior, who comes basically through time, quietly, and he expresses himself in a sentence where he says, right, you have chosen, you've chosen wisely, right? It's interesting if you look at it through metaphor and myth. The idea, right, that we are spoken to from the past. This knight remarks to Indiana Jones, you're dressed strangely, for a knight. In other words, through time, the way we look, the way we dress changes, but the concept of the noble human, right, still exists. So this idea came from my thoughts lately, and I'm going to discuss Exodus, and I've discussed inspiration, and I'm going to discuss a lot of concepts around why we prepare, why shit is going to hit the fan, what we need to do, right, how to understand it. So I'm going to kind of start with a Paul Joseph Watson video, and it's in the link or in the description down below, and he talks about male, white, middle-aged suicide. And when I looked at some of the stats, I noticed, male whites kind of lead the stats, but how about all the other races and both genders? Suicide is on the rise. And yes, right, this makes Democrats happy for a couple of reasons. The people who are being picked on the most, male conservatives, white, right? So naturally they're getting picked on the most in media, in entertainment, in the news. So wouldn't it make sense that they would be the ones most strongly or heavily affected in their head and their heart over what is going on in our world? What went wrong? Why is it continuing to get worse? Right? So that makes Democrats happy. They want a lower population on the planet, and they think the good people that you and I might call good people, are dying is fine. But I think that these people that are desperate, that are suicidal, they've lost hope, they don't see any way out, right? And they are the most hurt by what's going on. And you can't express it, right? Government has failed, in other words. I am laying this at the feet of government. All government. They have failed to give us justice. They have failed to keep our nation's wealth in our nation. As a result, the things that men gauge themselves by, their success as a human being, their potential to excel and do better, as in getting a job, a career, a good income, and having a family and providing for it. That was the American dream, not mortgage ownership that you never get to really own. That's not the American dream. The American dream was being free and having the ability to improve yourself and create, right? Create a family, a home, all that stuff. That's important to the male psyche. It's incredibly important. It's been part of civilization. Every man builds and wants to build and give to his family and community and make things better. But that's been taken away from us because of the injustices allowed by government. Government has failed us because it was supposed to protect us. Instead, it protects itself and it protects corporations. It's funding. So why? This video is not about suicide. That is an extreme example, but the rest of us are disenfranchised because we can't take action. I'm a man of action. I see an injustice, I say something about it. I see some violence, I stop it. I want justice, right? But we can't take action. We're not allowed to. This is why the Israelites fled Egypt. There was injustice. They were slaves. They couldn't get out of it, so they ended up doing an exodus. This is why there was an exodus from Europe for religious and political reasons by the Pilgrims. They were a religious group that was being persecuted politically, right? When secular government comes after you for religious reasons, that's a religious persecution. That is also a political persecution. They did an exodus, and much of Europe fled to America, right? That's the ideal way to say, hey, out of here. And you leave the cockroach scumbag politicians and kings and aristocrats, you leave them behind. That's ideal, right? That's the best way to get away. But that's not an option, right? So we have two choices. Here's the old guy again, right? He says, choose, but choose wisely. You lay down and commit social suicide, political suicide, and you just let them run over the top of us. And that's what we have right now. It's not bad enough to make everyone fight back. And we're not allowed to, and we're told and repeatedly warned. The government, the local law enforcement, and the feds will not allow us to oppose what's happening with violence. We will be arrested and prosecuted. That would be considered a revolt and treason on our part to take the law into our hands, to become vigilantes, even though vigilantism used to be considered a positive thing. That's right, vigilantism is positive. It's a way that people tell the government they're not doing their job right, and if the government won't do its job, we the people will. But we are scared to death with social conditioning and social controls. You'll lose your job. You will get locked up. You'll lose all of your benefits and freedoms in life. All of your privileges will be taken away. You'll lose your house, your family, your job. Right? And so people are scared. You'll be sent to prison where you'll be rectally violated because you're a soft white male in your 50s. That's what they tell you. They tell us directly as well as metaphorically. Oh, yes. I don't fear that quite as much because I'm rather large and at least I could defend myself, but I still don't want that, right? So we commit social and political suicide by doing nothing. Or our other choice is to fight back. But there's consequences, right? So how did all of this happen? How did all of this come about? How is it that suicide by the most disenfranchised amongst us, how is it that came about? What has happened? Well, government, it fails. It fails again and again and again. And it's now failing everybody. The leftists are learning. Government is failing them too. Because government really can't provide for socialists and communists, and it never has. Venezuela, modern example, failure. But the leftists go, that's not real socialism. Communist, Soviet Union, Russia, it failed. Oh, well, they were doing it wrong, and they didn't have all the technology, and yada, 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 and they were whatever. Right? But we see time and again where communism fails the left. It utterly fails them as much as it fails us. Government does. Government fails again and again. And the more power it has, the greater it can fail. right? So what are we seeing right now? What are we seeing as a result of this failure? We're starting to see violence become the response. We're not seeing it just one country or here and there. We're seeing it everywhere, and I've detailed in past videos the different countries and different cultures. It's happening right now most prevalently in Hong Kong. Chinese, Asian, Eastern, whatever you want to call it. Oriental, I know everyone hates that word Oriental now. I don't care. I grew up with it. It's on the Monopoly board. It's in books and movies, the Orient Express, right? It just means East, right? Ridiculous. They're taking our language, our rights, our freedoms. I don't play their game. I don't play their game anymore. Say what I want, right? But Hong Kong, in the East. In the West, we've got problems in Barcelona, Spain, Italy, Germany, France, England. These are not small countries. That is the heart and muscles of Europe. In the Americas, well, we've got Anglo North and we've got Latin South Americas. You've got Chile, Bolivia, Venezuela, as I mentioned. Brazil is a problem. Argentina. Up north, we have nothing but problems in Canada with all of their social crap. And it's violent in the United States of America. Antifa, which is an international terror organization. Antifa in the United States and Antifa in Europe are violent social communists. Violence is growing because of the inadequacies of government. And what is one of government's main functions, if not its primary function? It is protection against violence of others, theft of others, right? Either the theft of taking something, damaging persons and property. That's what government is supposed to protect us from. On the national level, it's supposed to be through the military. And domestically, it's supposed to be through peace officers. That's right, the constabulary branch of the government is supposed to be peace officers, not law enforcement, but peace officers who ensure the peace exists, not law enforcement. But that's what we have, do we not? So, government is failing because we can't hold them accountable. Because we're told you're not allowed to hold them accountable, and we're not allowed to take the law into our own hands. We're not allowed to be vigilantes and ensure the laws are upheld, the real laws, the laws for peace. So instead, right, we're left on our own and we're being victimized by Wall Street, by the banks, by the government, by corporations. So violence is the vehicle by which people end up expressing themselves. Now, people who want peace tend to respond peacefully. Unfortunately, the most despondent, beat down, and depressed amongst us resort to suicide. The rest of us, we're just left going, what do? We want peace, but we're not being given peace. We want justice and protection from the government, and instead, we're being victimized by the government. Well, the leftists are violent in nature. So the first thing they turn to is a violent response when they don't get what they want. Right? So the leftists are mobilizing violence, protests, beatings, attacks, fire. Right? They want to say what they want to say and they stop everyone else. So, government has failed, leftists become violence. Now, there's several things that are happening as a result of this. Cops are allowing Antifa and other violent groups to run wild. Now, what happens when the government and police are considered the enemy? Which the Antifa people do consider them the enemy. They just don't feel brazen enough yet to outright attack. They have in the past, and at certain instances, but not blanket everywhere. Right? Was it Ferguson? They attacked the police station, right? But in Hong Kong, it only took a matter of weeks before they tried setting stuff on fire. They got there quick, too. Anyways, what happens when police are overwhelmed by leftists? Because it can happen. It can happen really easily. Because there aren't that many of them. When something happens, they swarm on it from that city and surrounding cities and sheriff's department, and they try using an overwhelming force. But we've seen, in America even, how quickly that overwhelming force retreats. And I'll point to the Rodney King riots and how the police just backed out of there and let a shit-it's-the-fan hotspot burn. Well, as we've seen in Hong Kong, again, let's move back forward in time. In Hong Kong, they won't back off. The protesters aren't quitting. It's not 2 or 3 days like they had down with the Rodney King riots and things calm down and the police move back in. Hong Kong, it's continuing to erupt in violence. They won't go away. It's because there's nothing to go back to now. At least back in the Rodney King thing, everyone said, okay, well, let's go back to our jobs. The economy's fine. We'll sort this out in court. We've been shown that the economy is not fine, that there is bias, the government's a failure, that the economy is failing. There is no hope, so keep rioting. This happened, not in the United States of America, or rather colonial America. This is what happened in revolutionary France, which birthed Jacobinism and other violent terrorist organizations that came out and utterly had a reign of terror of their own. But it started with street violence, rioting. They had Bastille Day. They cut the king off of their head. Cut the head off of their king. Wow. What's in that drink? They guillotined the king because he refused to provide peace, protection, and justice. Peace, protection, and justice. When those are gone, we're going to have shit hitting the fan. So cops have allowed this Antifa thing. The government's allowed it. And there's no justice. There's no peace. Right? There's no protection. Cops are going to be overwhelmed by Antifa and others. The National Guard. I don't want to leave out the National Guard. People, well, what about our military? Nope. They can roll in with tanks. What did we see in France? That's right. Let's stay modern. What did we see in France? People using Molotov cocktails. In Hong Kong, they're using bows and arrows. They will fight back with what they have, regardless of whether or not they're going to be hurt or killed as a result. National Guard will be overwhelmed also. Even with bigger guns and sound cannons and real bullets, they can be shot also. Their supply lines can be cut because they're operating within our country. Right? They're surrounded by the people. They're not starting on one coast and burning their way to the other side. They're surrounded by people who have had enough because government has failed. On the right we see it and on the left we see it, but guess what? Guess what? Whether left or right, we don't agree with it. It's just the leftists are more violent and they're going to be the ones that start this. Oh, I talk to people and I hear from people who say, get ready for the revolution, get ready for the Civil War. Of course, I call it what? I call it partisan war because it's going to be fought by partisans, but it's the government that has failed. And another factor in this whole, well, the police will stop them, well, the government will protect us, is guess what? The law enforcement officers I've spoken to have told me, we're bugging out. Think I'm going to stay in this? You think the people in their neighborhoods don't know where they live? They'll go after their families, their children, their wives, just as law enforcement goes after our wives and our children. With these red flag laws, with phony warrants, with planted evidence in many cases. And I'm not denying that there isn't criminal behavior. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying, though, is planting evidence, lying by law enforcement and government officers is very, very common. Well, but we take bad guys off the street. Yeah? What about the bad guys in government? See, that's what we're not seeing. We'll get back to that in a bit, though. So choose, but choose wisely. Are you going to lay down or are you going to respond? Right? Are you going to commit self-sacrifice? In the most extreme cases, we see it as suicide. Are you going to do that and allow these people to take charge, take control, walk all over you, assault and murder you even? Are you going to do that? We're in the very early stages of seeing the socio-psycho suicide that's going on out around us. It's people just laying down and quitting, saying, screw it. I myself go, why should I go and pursue another $100,000+ a year job just so I can pay half of it in taxes? Why should I do that? Why should I produce and work my ass off if I don't get to benefit by it, when it's just going to feed a machine, the government, that doesn't care? And so we see that, and it takes away men's desire to create. Women's also, right? Except I don't understand the woman's experience. I'm a guy. I'm a man, right? I have a penis and a man all in one. Isn't that amazing? White, male, 50 years old, has penis, calls himself a man. Pretty rare these days, is it not? You don't think I don't feel tons of pressure. Oh man, I got to tell you, you have to subject yourself. You have to hate yourself for being a man. And I don't care what color you are, you have to hate yourself because you're toxic. Or what age you are, you have to give up. Well, you're a kid, you haven't lived that way, so you might as well live the way the new way is. You're old, what do you know? You're the past, you have to give up and live the new way, which is denounce your penis if you don't cut it off. Eat chemicalized foods and destroy yourself. You have to submit to the new think and the new social standards. Well, those are set forth by the political left that don't love you, don't want you, and actually hate you and rather just see you die. Oh yeah. This is the world we live in. This is reality now. This is where we're at. So choose wisely. Prepare for the day of, well, liberation from this concept of self-destruction and self-deprecation and suicide. Political suicide, social suicide, religious suicide. There's a religious element to this. We were told to stand up and act like men. Is that what men are doing? Is that what the churches are doing? Or are they becoming political extensions of the political Leviathan in Washington, London? So, choose wisely. Will it be self-sacrifice, not for a greater good? Or will it be act like men and stand up and prepare for the day when you can no longer say, I want peace and I won't be violent? There's going to come a time when you don't have a choice, when they're going to literally be coming at us, and we call that shit hitting the fan. That's what we call it. But I don't want to end this video on this note. I want to end on a different note. Can it be stopped? Can it be stopped? There is a very slim chance that yes, it can be stopped. Under the leadership of the president, who is, right, the top leader. If arrests are made, prosecutions happen, convictions for high crimes and treason are carried out, if justice is restored and government begins to protect the people, not corporations, not banks, if they stop looting us and pillaging us and trying to enslave us further with a militarized police force, if they stop all that and start arresting, prosecuting, convicting, sentencing, and incarcerating, if not hanging, treason, traitors, these high crime people that are public officials and wealthy people who are getting away with literal murder, if they do that, maybe it can be stopped. If they stop trying to kill us by suiciding our culture. In other words, like suicide by cop. If you go stand in front of a cop with a gun and wave it around, he's going to kill you. That's suicide, but the cop pulled the trigger. The government is in the same position, only it comes to us. And it says, stop waving your freedom in our face or we're going to kill you. right? So we are getting suicided by the government because of their rules and their just asinine treatment of the Constitution and our freedoms. It's criminal. They can stop that right now. Only they have the power, because we don't as individuals, and we're not allowed to become vigilantes. And we want peace. And that's government's role, is to protect the peace. Protect our borders, protect domestically, ensure peace so that we can live free. If they don't do that, it's going to inevitably collapse into shit-it's-the-fan madness. And we're continuing down that road right now. I don't want anyone to commit suicide, right? I don't want anyone to lay down. But we know our limitations as people. We know our limitations as groups and communities. We know what will happen if we stand up and try and take back what America was. Sadly, in 3 years, make America great. Well, we've done some good things under President Trump, and President Trump has, but has the train been stopped and turned around? In my opinion, no, not even close. Not even close. Again, can it be stopped? Yes, if Trump does, from the White House, arrest, prosecute, convict, sentence, and carry out that sentence. Jail time or execution of the criminals that are doing what they're doing. We know their names, and I don't need to repeat them. But this is what position we are at now. It's inevitable, and it's inevitably going to happen, that we're going to descend into violence. We're going to watch the police try. We're going to watch the police fail. We're going to see the military try. We're going to see the military fail. We're going to see partisan divides in the police, in the military, among the citizenry, and that is shit hitting the fan. Now, can stores stay open? Can fuel be delivered? Will the lights stay on during this time? Well, maybe in greater and lesser degrees here and there, but guess what? Odds are slim, right? I hope and pray for shit it's the fan light as we are trying to regain our moral, social, and political sanity. That would be shit it's the fan light. Or we could go into something much, much worse. This is where we're at, though. This is where we're at. If you can't run away and there's no place to go. If government won't do its job. This is where we're at. This is why we're preppers. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, and a plan. That is the essence of it. The essence of prepping. Why? Why is this happening? Government has failed. And special interest groups control. And it's all being done for profit by the most powerful. Chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours. Share this video. Semper Fi. Always faithful. Godspeed to all.